and welcome to another episode of This Week in Cleantech. It's a roundup of the week's biggest stories you need to know in climate and clean energy in 15 minutes or less. Today is Friday, November 8th, 2024. I'm Renewable Energy World Editor-in-Chief John Engel. Our resident reporter on this show, Tim McDonald from Semafor, will be joining us shortly. But for now, I'm joined by Mike Casey of TigerCom. Mike, I usually ask, how's it going? But I feel like I know how it's going, so I'll just kind of let you rip here for a second.
I got a lot to say, and I'm going to leave it in my head and just note that I just posted on LinkedIn.
That's a place I wouldn't like to be right now. Sorry. I'm just thinking about what the war that's underway inside Mike Casey's brain has to be a tough scene.
It's I've lived here for 60 years, John, so, I'm used to it. but I'll just say I posted on LinkedIn just this morning. I reposted something called Brace for Impact, which is a set of recommendations to clean tech companies to consider. We did this after Biden's debate performance, and it looked likely that who's coming to the White House was going to come to the White House, so people can check that out. But this is going to be a very, very challenging 4 years, and it's going to require a lot of companies in the space to significantly up their game.
And the innovators are going to separate themselves. You will not be able to fly under the cover of a favorable administration and positive policy advancement. There will be winners and losers over the next 4 years. So, and we'll get to more of that with Tim when we get to some of our election talk. But Mike, let's get into the stories this week.
Okay, first story: Mario Alejandro Ariza, Miranda Green, Pam Radke from Floodlight News. Those folks do some really good coverage.
They're really good. And they participate in nonprofit, like Creative Commons journalism too, and allow anyone to republish their stuff. And it's solid. So if you haven't checked out Floodlight yet, and we did have Mario on the show, make sure you do that and subscribe to them.
Yeah, their story is utility regulators take millions from industries they oversee. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? All right, John. Yeah, you take this one so I can temper my input.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it easy on you this week too, Mike, because I can tell there's some fragility in your demeanor. And for all of us.
Engel, if you start telling me fragile, I'm going to put I blew the dust off this bad boy. I'll put this damn headgear on. Yeah, you'll see.
And I'm guessing those weren't very effective back in the day, just given the Mike Casey I know. Okay. So getting into the story, in the face of climate change, public utility commissioners, PUCs, are more important than ever. They can influence and push clean, affordable electricity. But a new Floodlight analysis found that in 9 out of 10 states that elect their commissioners, more than a third of their contributions of $250 or more are from fossil fuel and electric utility interests, more than twice as much as the renewables industry. Commissioners backed primarily by individuals with fossil fuel or utility interests may have contributed to slower progress on decarbonization. So, for example, some Sunbelt or southern states, despite having ideal solar potential, have had commissioners openly be hostile toward renewable energy adoption, and that hostility may have prevented these states from fully capitalizing on affordable solar energy, leading to higher than average increases in residential electricity bills over the past 5 years. Mike, your thoughts?
Well, I would say that This Week in Cleantech listeners have seen this movie before, a la the first energy scandals. I mean, just to let us not walk past the poo piles in the room here without pointing them out. We have this ridiculous notion in place right now where political campaign contributions equal free speech. Well, that's great, but it undercuts the premise that everybody's got equal say, because if you're a big interest and you can bankroll a regulator's campaign, you have way more say-so than the ratepayer who doesn't do that. So let's just be clear, this is legalized bribery. And it's foolish that electric utilities or fossil fuel companies can give money to commissioners who have the power to make the rules that regulate them. So Ari Presko, the director of Electricity Law Initiative at Harvard University, put it becomes problematic when the regulators overseeing the utility are essentially supported by the utility itself. That is putting it mildly. These commissioners are imposing some of the highest electricity bills on ratepayers in regions with abundant sunlight where solar energy is low cost. Look no further than Alabama, which, despite its sunny climate, generates less solar power than states with lower solar potential, such as Maine and Michigan. To state the obvious, this is not logical for ratepayers. The fossil fuel lobby ignores the basic economic advantages of clean energy in the region, yet they promise ratepayers that they will lower electricity prices. Good luck squaring that circle. John, story number 2.
Yeah, and we're going to pick up the pace here because I really want to get to Tim and our fifth story down the line. So, Tim, this is from TechCrunch. Oil giant BP is killing 18 hydrogen projects, chilling the nascent industry. Mike, you know how I feel about hydrogen. How do you feel?
Well, I set aside feeling in this note, hydrogen companies have financially relied on the oil and gas companies, and now they're at risk of losing that support. The oil and gas industry has decades of experience developing the types of big infrastructure projects that are going to be necessary if hydrogen becomes a viable way to produce to cut carbon pollution. So hydrogen production is an attractive area for investment, as the oil and gas companies could readily adapt their capabilities to support low carbon energy transition, especially if future regulations or incentives require them to do so. BP's decision to kill these projects, along with the scale of their U.S. onshore wind operations, will save the company $2 billion annually. That's a lot of money, John.
Yeah, and I think the oil giants have been pretty honest about their intention actually to lean back into oil and gas and maybe away from some of the clean technologies. And this is a big hit to hydrogen. And
Yes.
what we will wait to see is what the broader trend is here with oil and gas giants investing in clean energy, whether that was just kind of a PR piece to put out there along the way, or, with the incoming administration, you have to imagine that they will not face the same level of scrutiny and pressure. Mike, number 3.
Harry Dempsey, Financial Times, world's largest transformer maker warns of supply crunch.
Yeah, I don't think you got to warn about it, but Hitachi Energy, the world's largest transformer producer, has warned that the industry is struggling to meet the surging demand for grid equipment. They are. And the supplies have been strained by growing needs of data centers who are now procuring these transformers themselves. Transformers ramp electrical voltage up and down, play a critical role in the power grid, and more will be needed as we add new generation. It used to be easy to buy with wait times of 6 to 8 months, and now that demand has skyrocketed, the wait times can extend to 3 to 4 years if utilities have not reserved them. Some analysts predict that transformer prices increased by 40% since 2019 and that the supply crunch will last until at least the end of 2026. Mike.
Hitachi Energy investing $6 billion and hiring 15,000 more workers to expand production, but given the 3 to 4 year wait time, the industry's current pace is struggling to keep up with immediate demands at a time when the data centers require vast amounts of electricity. This means we won't be able to build renewables quickly enough to keep up with the rise in electricity demand that will have massive ripple effects throughout the energy industry. John, our 4th story.
Yeah, this was a big one late last week. It was a nice Friday evening FERC ruling. I think they did that purposefully. This is from Bloomberg. U.S. regulator rejects Amazon Talon nuclear power agreement. Mike.
FERC rejected a deal that would allow one of Amazon's data centers to use more power from a nearby nuclear plant. Majority of FERC commissioners believe the deal needed to be reviewed more closely. However, the chairman, Willie Phillips, disagreed and said the decision was a, quote, step backward, end quote, for both electricity reliability and national security. John?
Yeah, so big tech wants to set up their power-hungry data centers right next to power plants, but they may create issues with how electricity is planned. So if the data center uses the power faster than what the utility planned for, the grid may become less stable, lead to potential shortages or disruptions for consumers in the future. As we know, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, all of them are chasing after clean energy. Clean, firm energy is harder to find. And to do a co-located data center nuclear project like this, with a power plant directly powering a data center, I think the big issue was avoiding transmission costs and what they contribute to the broader grid. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this and what the ripple effects are for data centers, even using behind the meter technologies to supply their power needs. Mike, our 5th story and our guest this week.
Tim McDonald, who is up on the Mount Rushmore for This Week in Cleantech, and who I must say, Mr. Engel, I think Tim is your favorite reporter in secret. Maeve Alsop will be latitude me to be jealous, but I'm just going to let you know. I think you would really want a couple hours at a cafe in Kiev with Tim more than anyone else.
Oh, I really do appreciate that. Because Tim
anytime.
listens to every episode, he probably heard last week that I did say that he was among my favorites. But Maeve also, I think, got the top award for that in my very informal ranking of This Week in Cleantech reporters. You're right there, though, Tim. You're nipping at her heels.
Mad respect to Maeve also.
Maeve's
Tim,
great.
Which one of us is the reporter? Which one's the PR guy? Like right now, Engel's kind of getting in on. He's getting outside his lane.
I have nothing to gain from my, I'll call it friendship now, with Tim. You, however, the flaky Beltway elite, have much more to gain.
I'm outside the Beltway. Engel, come on, get your geography right.
Of course you are.
I have no comment on it.
Yeah. All right, Tim, thanks so much for joining us on This Week in Cleantech. Mike, why don't you introduce the story? That's your thing.
Okay. All right. Donald Trump will test how fragile the energy transition really is. Tim, I know you didn't write the headline, but man, I wish they had used the word strong instead of fragile. But hey, let's not ditty on F words. People need to read this story, but if they haven't yet, what is the big takeaway, my friend?
I think the takeaway is, we're living in a very different world from the one that we were in when Donald Trump was the last time that Donald Trump was president. And, there's been a huge amount of momentum and, kind of growth in the clean energy sector for, a million different reasons that people listening to this podcast are familiar with since 2016, 2017. And, I think during Trump's first term, that there was a kind of sense that this was still, relative to today, was a much more nascent industry, whether you're looking at, renewables or EVs or stuff like hydrogen or carbon capture and any of the technologies that we're talking about on the show. And, at that time, it was sort of like, that all of these things were at this very nascent period where they could sort of be, potentially killed off very easily. I think now we're in a very different world where there's been a lot of growth and a lot of these industries are much more mature. We have this, Inflation Reduction Act money that has come in. And so I think that the kind of question that we are facing now is, to what extent does the sort of federal policy supporting some of this energy transition activity, how important is that really for keeping the momentum going? Because we probably will see some changes, and we can talk about what those might be. I don't think that, even in a scenario where Republicans win both houses of Congress and we have Donald Trump in the White House, I don't think that the entire Inflation Reduction Act is going to be thrown out the window, because most of the money, as people know, these projects are mostly happening in Republican congressional districts, and I don't see there being a kind of wave of willingness among Republicans in Congress to repeal that law. But that said, I mean, it may be chipped away in different areas, and we're definitely going to see some rollbacks of emissions regulation for power plants or for vehicles, or methane emissions, that kind of thing that sort of it does affect the energy transition by kind of making it a little bit less painful to burn fossil fuels. And so how much does all of that matter? I mean, that's the kind of question that I think we're facing now. And it's like I said, it's a different world than the first time that he was around. And there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think that, I don't think it's going to be possible or feasible for the Trump administration to come in and say, hey, we think climate change is a hoax and we don't want to do any of this stuff and we're scrapping the entire project. I don't think they're going to do that because of just how much money has already been invested, and the sort of pushback that would face from members of their own party and from business leaders, and I mean all of that. So it's going to be a very different kind of challenge. But that's not to say that not to be Pollyanna-ish, not to say that there may not be some serious challenges for the industry ahead. But it's definitely a different world. It's going to be a very interesting 4 years for sure.
Yeah, Tim, I'm trying to look at, what he said on the campaign trail, what he could actually do, and then how long it would take. So like the EPA power plant and carbon emissions rule, I mean, I think that's a given that's gone.
Right.
Rural co-ops and smaller utilities have been advocating to get rid of that since it was put in place.
Mm-hmm.
He's talked about the non-existent Biden EV mandate. So go ahead, you can take that away because it's not real. He said that he was going to squash the offshore wind industry on day one. He could pause future auctions, but that industry is already not participating in auctions. Like they're going with one bid or getting canceled or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and the projects in motion are going to keep going. You're not going to revoke that lease after billions of dollars in investment. And then the Inflation Reduction Act, even with one party control of Congress, would take so much time to unravel. And so I try to think about like tangibly what is going to happen, especially in the near term, to this industry. And I'm curious if you got a sense for, the evolving feelings and tone within the clean energy community about like what the hell's going to happen, like really happen.
Well, I think that very question is itself the challenge, which is that, I mean, Trump kind of campaigned successfully on being an agent of chaos and being a disruptor and being unpredictable. And we know that from last time that he's prone to making unplanned sweeping policy pronouncements, during rallies, and things that people on his own staff never heard about before, and going with the opinion of the last person that he spoke to on whatever issue, and all of that kind of uncertainty and just is of course like that's the kind of thing that keeps CEOs awake at night, and that nobody wants to live. You can't invest in a world where we can sit here on the show and talk about we think he's going to do this or he's going to struggle to do that or whatever. But I mean, if you're talking about investing hundreds of millions of dollars into some project, renewable energy, climate tech project, you can't do that if there's all this uncertainty. And uncertainty is a fundamental characteristic of Trump's entire persona and way of and approach to governance. So that is going to be, I think, a big challenge for this industry, is how much investment is going to sit on the sidelines, for some period of months or years, into the future from now, while we kind of wait to see like which of these things can really happen and which won't, and what will Congress let him get away with, and et cetera. And that's it's a very difficult situation for the transition to find itself in every month that goes by. I mean, if we're talking about meeting climate goals as one of the kind of end games here, that's important. We don't have that kind of time to waste. So I think that uncertainty and sort of all those questions are going to be a really big part of the challenge going forward.
I hear a new headline in your story, Tim. Impulse control challenge is not a business strategy. All right, that's good. John, we got to go to Cleantecher of the Week.
Yeah.
Apropos of everything, we did not even write in a Cleantecher of the Week this week, Mike. I think that's very descriptive of how this these last few days have felt. So you're all Cleantechers of the Week this week. We're thinking about you, and I know that a lot of you have a lot of feelings, and that the next few years could be challenging. But
if I can just say on that, John, that I think it's going to be very important. The answer to all the questions that we were just talking about is really going to depend on how much this industry is willing and able to engage with the incoming administration. So
sure.
all the clean tech people listening to this, I mean, it's incumbent on you to advocate for your own interests and here, and advocate for the industry, and that kind of education is going to be more important than ever. So that, hopefully people take that away.
Yeah, and Abby Hopper said that in her LinkedIn post with the statement from SIA right after the election, saying like, we're not a red organization, we're not a blue organization, we create jobs and drive economic prosperity and a cleaner environment for all of us. So remember, solar grew under Trump. Solar will continue to grow. And you will have to get more nimble in how you navigate your organization and find those business cases. It will not be as simple as it was. Like that, not trying to minimize, the business, but you will encounter new challenges. But those who are crafty and employ Mike Casey on their media and community relations teams will be fine.
Can you Venmo John? I think it's like 150. But thanks. Okay,
That was really nice of me. Looking at the totality of this episode catalog, that may be the nicest thing I've said to you.
Air hug, my friend.
All right.
Here you go. All right, John.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for coming on, John. We want to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, Claire Quirin, and Alex Peterson for gathering these stories.
Yeah.
And
God bless y'all.
Next week, we'll have the next John Engel in waiting, Paul Gerke, stepping in for traveling John Engel. And John, I will see you in 2 weeks if you have not been summarily replaced with Paul by then.
God willing. All right.
Take care. Bye.